Leaguers? Welcome to the Spectacular Spoiler League. I'm the Pandan Superman, the mayor of Hype City, HazyRome, and as always, I'm joined by the God of Night, the Prime Minister of Post-Production, DeepBoyce. And today, we're in the Hall of Spoilers to talk a little bit about Spider-Man, but not Peter Parker, people.
Uh-oh.
I'm talking about Miles Morales. Wow, I can't believe I said Peter Parker, people.
Peter
Parker,
making
a mistake.
People. Say that 3 times fast. Don't do it.
I won't ever be able to do that, okay? But we're talking about Miles Morales, DeepBoyce. Why are we talking about Miles Morales? Because recently, Miles Morales was confirmed to exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So let me give you guys the background on this.
Yeah.
So basically, all right, what I'm about to say right now contains some minor spoilers for Spider-Man Homecoming. But this is a Spectacular Spoiler League, baby. So why are you here if you're not expecting some spoilers? So, with that being said, I'm giving you a warning. If you don't want any spoilers for Spider-Man Homecoming, you should leave the video now. But make sure to come back and listen after you see the movie. With that being said, I'm about to get into it. So, during an interview with Screen Crush and Kevin Feige, Screen Crush asked the following question. And this is a minor spoiler for Spider-Man Homecoming once again. So, please, if you don't want to know any spoilers, don't listen to this part. The interviewer at Screen Crush said, I love the Donald Glover part. He's great in general, but I love the part where he mentions his nephew, who comic book readers know is Miles Morales. Do you think we could see his nephew somewhere down the line, or is that more of an Easter egg for fans? So Kevin Feige's comment in response to this question is what's truly important here. He says, all of those little things are just Easter eggs for fans until there's something more than that. But anything that's happened in the books is potential material for us. In the meantime, I think Miles is a big part of the animated movie that Sony's making. But where we go, we definitely want you to go. He's there. He's there somewhere. So, yes, he's in the MCU, man. What does that mean, DeepBoyce, man?
What does it mean? It may not mean much. It could be a cameo appearance, maybe a little nod, an homage. Or it could mean that we actually get Spider-Man Miles Morales in the future of the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe. Maybe his own movie. Maybe he's a sidekick. Maybe he shows up in one of the Spider-Man Homecoming sequels.
Sure.
Who knows?
No, here's the thing, right? Just because Miles Morales is in the universe doesn't mean he's going to become Spider-Man right off the bat. Tom Holland, he may have actually slipped up in saying this, but he actually confirmed, like, in an interview that there's going to be a Spider-Man trilogy starring him. Mm-hmm. Now, I say he slipped up because Marvel had already said there's going to be a Spider-Man Homecoming sequel. They already said that that's going to be the first movie in Phase 4, but they didn't say anything about a trilogy. So Tom Holland slipped up, and we can confirm that there's going to be a Spider-Man trilogy unless some drastic shakeup happens between now and then. Mm-hmm. So just because Miles Morales is in the world doesn't necessarily mean he's going to become Spider-Man, but he could be mentored, or at least he could be played. He could be introduced as a minor character, potentially. Now, Tom Holland has actually made some comments in regards to, you know, how he would feel about having Miles Morales in the movies. So during the press junket for Spider-Man Homecoming, Screen Rant, they interviewed Tom Holland and they asked him if he'd like to see, you know, Spider-Man mentor, you know, another character, similar to what, you know, Tony Stark is doing for him in Spider-Man Homecoming. Yeah. So he said that would be something I would be very up for doing. It's something that I would really hope to happen. I think Miles Morales is a great character. I think it would be fantastic to have an actor of color playing a superhero on screen, and I just think it's going to be something very cool and something very exciting for this universe. How do you feel about that, man?
Well, I pretty much agree. I mean, to the point that I felt it was rather obvious. I mean, I guess we don't have footage. This wasn't filmed. This is just kind of, I guess, a transcript of something that happened. We don't know exactly what the specific question was and how they framed it when they asked him. But I don't know. I don't know what you think, Hazy, but I would be very excited to see Miles Morales in the movies.
I'm down for it. I'm 100% down for it, but it's a matter of how he's introduced.
Yes.
Because absolutely. for me, like, it's got to be done right and it's got to feel authentic. Like, one thing that, you know, people automatically assume is, you know, whatever happened in the Ultimates universe, which is, you know, where Miles Morales originated. You know, if you're familiar with Marvel Comics at some point, I feel like I've explained this like a lot of videos, but I always do it just in case you don't know. Marvel Comics used to have two main universes, Earth 616 and the Ultimate Universe. Earth 616 was like their main comic line, you know, from the beginning of Marvel Comics history to whenever 616 ended. The Ultimates comics was kind of like Marvel's attempt to modernize Marvel comic stories. Basically,
it was Earth 1610, by the way.
There you go, Earth 1610, and it was Marvel's way of modernizing a lot of the stories and, you know, basically allowing some creative freedom in how they switch up roles. So Miles Morales was introduced. Peter Parker actually died in the Ultimates comics, but I don't necessarily want Peter Parker to die.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want him to necessarily die. Like, I feel like, you know, some heroes got to die. I agree. You know, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you can't have all these heroes surviving. But I feel like Peter Parker represents the everyman.
And
what do you think, boys?
Not to get too much into, I mean, other rumors and news, but there's a possibility that some heroes may die during Infinity War or Avengers 4.
Definitely.
I don't know. I mean, I love Spider-Man. I absolutely love Spider-Man. He's at least like one of my top 3 favorite superheroes. But maybe it really all depends. It has to be done well. It would be very difficult to do the death of Peter Parker well if they were to do it. I'm not completely opposed to it because, you know, that could be an amazing story if it's done right. I mean, obviously not to kill him to introduce someone else, but to kill him for a very good reason in a very, you know, very interesting way. Because obviously, you know, Marvel gets a lot of criticism and either criticism or people pointing out, because I think it's rather obvious, they do play it safe more often than not. They do have a formula. And you know, even if some of these heroes do die during Infinity Wars, I still think that would be somewhat surprising. You know, that Marvel's pretty light with a lot of the things they do in these movies. And I mean, obviously, the most obvious reason why that wouldn't happen, why Spider-Man wouldn't die, is because Tom Holland is young, and it seems like they're looking for that next Robert Downey Jr. for their Marvel, the MCU. You know, after Phase 4 or during Phase 4 for Into the Future, and nabbing Spider-Man was a huge deal. And
definitely. You know, he was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Spider-Man is a very versatile character. There's a lot of great villains they got there, a lot of stories that they can do. So, you know, the question isn't, you know, what's going to happen with Peter Parker. I mean, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of positive things. And we have had a few, I guess, a few people that have already seen the movie say that they really liked it. I mean, obviously still too early to see, but I hope it is good. I bet my money that maybe it is kind of a fun movie to watch. But I think we're safe. I think we'll be all right in terms of Peter Parker coming into the future.
So you don't think Peter Parker's going to die down the road?
No, I don't think so. That's too much. Disney's about making money, and I don't think that they would. They do franchises because it makes a lot of money, so they're going to keep them around. So the most likely.
So what are the options here?
The options are either Miles Morales is a, I guess, supporting character in a Spider-Man movie, or maybe he has his own movie, which could be difficult, or it might not be difficult. You know, for my opinion, it might be a little difficult to do just to have two Spider-Man. I mean, they could call one movie Amazing Spider-Man, and then the Miles Morales one is Ultimate Spider-Man or Spectacular Spider-Man. I guess they could do that, and I mean, people are gonna roll their eyes, maybe groan about it, but me, I'd be like, hey, as long as they're different, as long as they're distinctly different and they're their own unique characters, because I like them both. I like Miles Morales and I like Peter Parker, so I would want to see different stories and the way, you know, the movie's constructed in a different way.
I find it hard to see. I find it hard to see two Spider-Man movies just because Marvel is they're so protective of their marketing and how they do things, and I feel like two Spider-Men, like Marvel understands the audience is smarter than, you know, they let on. I just feel like for the general populace, you know, two Spider-Men having different movie franchises might be a little bit much. It also might be Spider-Man overkill.
Yeah.
And then, people might also feel like how they felt when Miles Morales was originally announced. Like, there were a lot of people when Miles Morales was originally announced as being the new Spider-Man and that he was going to be, Peter Parker was dead. There was a lot of people dead in the Ultimate Universe. Yeah. He was alive in the Earth 616 Amazing Spider-Man run. But there was a lot of people who were like, Miles Morales, he's... why can't he just be his own hero? He's taking the role of Peter Parker. Peter Parker's dying to introduce a person of color. Like, why are they doing this? There's not really any reason to. Like, people were upset. And they just felt like it was an excuse to introduce a token and to appease, other ethnicities and other races.
Diversity for diversity's sake.
Correct. And if there's two Spider-Men, I hate to say it this way, but I feel like there's a lot of people who might just look at it like, oh, this is the Spider-Man we all know and love, Peter Parker, and that's just the Black Spider-Man.
Absolutely. I mean, especially, I just feel that
even though Miles Morales is Black and Hispanic, I just thought I'd say that, put that out there.
He is, yeah. He's. I mean, for the people out there that know or would would care, he's African American by way of his father, and he's Puerto Rican by way of his mother. Yes. And they do, address that in the comic books, which is, I think, one of the great things about that character that you get to see.
Absolutely.
Like, they do a good way of depicting being, I guess what would be the word, mixed or multi-ethnic or having a mixed household, I guess you could say.
Yeah, or biracial.
Biracial.
Well, I think people also, what it comes down to is like, we're both two people of color. So like when we have someone who is of color and they're inserted into something, we don't necessarily feel like it's intrusive. We feel like, I think there's a part of us like, about damn time, but what it comes down to, I think, is people want to see good stories and they don't want to feel like it's shoehorned in there. Like there was a certain sect of people that were mad about, for example, Idris Elba being cast as like Heimdall, but I feel like that was like an extreme set of people. Most people were just like, all right, Heimdall's a little different because he's kind of like not really a main character per se, but I feel like you're always gonna have a certain sect of people that are mad. But if you're telling good stories and you make the character likable, it's okay. Now, in terms of how they could be introduced him, will they introduce him in Phase 4? I think that if Peter Parker doesn't die, which I don't think I wouldn't want to see that. Like I said, I think Peter Parker is the only hero that represents the everyman. You could talk about Captain America, but Captain America's got a super soldier serum, and he's from a different time period. And yes, he's very much the blue collared working man. But I feel like Peter Parker is the everyman because we can all relate to growing up in modern times and just being young, struggling through high school, not having any money. And Peter Parker is about that. He has real life problems, which we haven't necessarily seen from Cap in his interpretation. We haven't seen like his real life problems. We know that he has issues kind of settling into this time period, but we don't see his like interpersonal problems or like his family problems. Right. We don't see the human side of him too much. You see it a little with Bucky, but Peter Parker has family, friends, schoolmates, a secret identity. That's something the Marvel Cinematic Universe lacks for many of its characters. And I feel like killing him will be a problem. That being said, we could look to what current comics are doing with Peter Parker, right? So currently in the comics, in Marvel Comics, Peter Parker is the head of his own company, Parker Industries. And as head of that company, he actually is operating as Spider-Man still, but they could do it so that maybe he is more of a philanthropist. Maybe, he gets a company and gets to the point where he's like, okay, I can pass the mantle on to somebody so that I can live my life, but at the same time, very much being a part of the Avengers, very much being a sponsor of the Avengers. And maybe he doesn't become, maybe he's not in the main Spider-Man films, but maybe he appears in the Avengers films. So like Tony Stark, for example, he doesn't have the Iron Man trilogies. He did the Iron Man trilogy and he hasn't done any Iron Man solo movies, but he's basically just kind of appearing in other movies right now and he'll come out as an Avenger. But we don't necessarily know if Iron Man is operating, 24/7 in the universe. He's kind of more of a mentoring character, or at least that's what they seem to be transitioning him towards.
Yeah.
So what if they did that for Peter Parker down the road?
Instead
of having it be like, a death or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's. Now that you mentioned it, that seems like a more reasonable thing to do. Have him kind of take on the role of Tony Stark in his upcoming movie, where Iron Man is the mentor for Peter Parker in Spider-Man: Homecoming. So whenever they do want to, maybe because that could, liven up the character of Spider-Man, freshen him up, give him a different role, and it'll still be Spider-Man, but the character that will be Spider-Man will be Miles Morales, and Peter Parker's still there. He still has all his powers, but he, like in the comics right now, is the head of Parker Industries, or maybe he takes over Stark Industries and he just renames it, and he has all he becomes part of the board of whatever, and maybe Robert Downey Jr. finally steps down, so he becomes the head of the company in the movies, and then he basically is the one that's providing the technology, and he has a different role. He's still present. Yeah, he has an entirely different role, and Miles Morales, to whatever capacity, is Spider-Man. I mean,
and I think it's reasonable if they said, hey, Peter Parker, he's spent his time being a hero, and he deserves to live his life right now. Insert next person who's taking on the mantle. Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, and I think that would address some of the issues that people would have of just inserting Miles Morales and seeing him as the Black Spider-Man, because oftentimes the issue, I guess, not from us as well, as people of color, people that like seeing characters like Miles Morales, is we don't just want a character for the sake of a character being there because they're of color or a token character. We do want dope stories backing up these characters and introducing Miles slowly throughout the movies, and then he eventually takes up the mantle of Spider-Man. But you still have Peter Parker switch roles, and in a presence in these movies is a great way to grow Peter Parker as a character and build up Miles Morales as his own character. And then maybe it'll get to a point where, maybe they do like what they do with Captain America movies. Like Captain America Civil War wasn't just about Captain. It was almost like another Avengers movie. So maybe they could do Spider-Man whatever, Sinister Six, and you have Miles as Spider-Man, you have Peter Parker as Spider-Man, and you have other heroes come in, and you have a whole bunch of villains. That's another way to kind of mix and match and move all these pieces around.
For sure. Yeah. For sure, man. And who knows, like, if they want to get more sci-fi with how they do Spider-Man, they could be something where, something akin to Web Warriors or something along those lines, where, or Spider Island or something like that. Spider-Verse, right? Where he, maybe there's multiple Spider-Men involved in, the whole thing and the whole interpretation. You know what I mean? You start bringing in, you could bring back Peter Parker, have him, get back in the suit. Like, just because Peter Parker is quote unquote retired doesn't mean he's not, still down to, sling some webs and do his thing. But I think in terms of the main movies, you can still have Miles Morales be the main Spider-Man. Also, you don't necessarily have to retire Peter Parker. Just shift it. You could also just shift the trilogy to Miles Morales. Like, hey, I'm giving you this mantle. Here you go. And maybe Peter Parker does what, like you said, like Iron Man is doing in other movies right now, and not just necessarily Iron Man, but like just how Marvel seems to be approaching movies, which is more along the lines of, hey, we're not just going to feature the title character in this movie, we're also going to pepper other characters in this movie. For example, Thor Ragnarok is going to feature Hulk. It's also going to feature Doctor Strange. Like, who's to say just because Miles Morales is starring in Spider-Man trilogy that Peter Parker can't do a team-up film with, I don't know, Black Panther. Black Panther 2, Spider-Man's running around with Black Panther. True. Or, Doctor Strange 2, Peter Parker is teaming up with Doctor Strange. Yeah, make what I'm saying?
Like a variable you could just insert in other movies.
Exactly. Because like you said, Tom Holland's young. And, like even when he finishes this trilogy, dude's probably going to be in his mid-20s. Mid to late 20s at the most. Yeah. So, but anyway, guys, what do you guys think about Miles Morales being confirmed for existing in the MCU? Where do you think Miles Morales will be introduced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Do you think he's going to be introduced in Phase 4? How do you think they should introduce Miles Morales? And by all means, comment on anything we've said in this video today. With that being said, if you liked anything you heard today, join up with the Spectacular Spoiler League by hitting that subscribe button. And we'll see you guys on the next video.
Peace.